Hey guys, it is Brett Cowie here from GenFit with our Let's Talk series. Usually we're doing something with Michael talking about knee wraps and stuff like that, but today I've got a very special guest. Thank you so much for giving your time today. This is Isaac. Isaac, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. Isaac Baker, Dr. Isaac Baker.
Sorry.
Of the PhD variety, not the medical variety. So what do I do? I'm a behavioural scientist,
Okay.
or applied behavioural scientist. And what that means is, well, all my studies were in psychology and behavioural science, wanting to understand the nature of human decision-making, behaviour, and ultimately how we can change human decision-making and behaviour. So both from one person wanting to influence and persuade other people to changing your own behaviours as well. So I think it's really applicable to this conversation in terms of looking at health outcomes, healthy behaviours, exercise, eating, whatever it may be. So just the science of behaviour change, influence, persuasion, and that's what I'm all about.
Yeah, cool. Cool. Yeah, so today I just wanted to talk on, I've just finished reading the book of 7 habits of highly effective people, and I thought it would be really interesting to get Isaac on board, Dr. Isaac, to talk about how we can digest these habits in a health and fitness lifestyle with family life, our busy lives and priorities and all that, and really circle it into these habits, how you can sort of form them to become better and perform better in all aspects of life. So I guess let's just dive into it.
Let's do it. Perfect.
So the first one was sort of about priorities and really focusing on the professional and personal life, really setting goals for what you want to achieve each week, and tongue twisted now. So just using quadrants and sections of different aspects, whether you want to focus on your health or nutrition, getting to the gym, say your daughter's dancing lessons or your wife's work event or something like that. All these different priorities that come into your life and how to fit those in and that sort of thing. Do you have anything to comment on that?
Yeah, let's talk goals.
Goals,
Right? So
okay.
ultimately, to achieve anything, we need to be moving in a certain direction. And how do you know which direction to move in? Well, you need goals. You need the Northern Star that you're actually traveling towards. So in terms of the psychological literature about behavior change and changing your own behavior, other people's behavior, setting goals is crucial. So goal setting theory posits that you need to have that, it's very beneficial, I should say, to have that Northern Star that you're working towards. In terms of those quadrants, this applies to any quadrant or any domain of life. So you mentioned the personal, the professional, it all overlaps ultimately, but in terms of these different domains, health, wellness, whatever it may be, the financial side, having salient, clear goals is crucial, because you need to know across all these domains how you work towards that Northern Star, and of course how you create plans to work towards that Northern Star as effectively and as efficiently as possible. So goals are going to be key, and that ultimately means going hand in hand with goals is the purpose behind the goals. Okay. So you can articulate a goal, but if it's not meaningful to you and there's no even higher order purpose to that particular goal, it's less likely to be adhered to, and you're less likely to do the behaviors and actions that you need to undertake to get there. So there's layers to this. You need the higher order. What's the purpose of this particular domain, like in terms of connection and family? What's the purpose here? What are you trying to achieve, broadly speaking? And then from there, you reverse engineer it and you create, okay, what are the little goals that would satisfy that broader purpose? And then you reverse engineer it even more to go step by step, getting more and more concrete from the higher level abstract goals and like big picture purpose, the whys.
Yeah, right. So really nutting down and finding exactly what you want and what it means to you.
That's key. And
then backtracking and then figuring out those little steps in order to get to that end goal.
Yeah, because again, creating goals willy-nilly just based on other people's motivations, other people's purposes, it's not going to work, right? So you need to find out, like, fundamentally, you need to
Those
sit down with
external
yourself.
motivators. So
Yeah,
you really
exactly.
got to find those internal, what you want, not what others want.
And that's specific to your context, your life, your experience, where you want to go in life. And it's definitely taking that more philosophical lens, but you have to think about, big picture as you can, and then narrow in on something that's more concrete and more practical, ultimately, when you get to the actual devising tactics and strategies and what you do on a daily basis. But yeah, the goals have to be embedded within a broader piece of what you want to achieve. Like, why is this important? The why is going to be huge, and having time to self-reflect upon, say you create a goal, I want to get fit, or even get more specific than that. Okay, why do you want to do that? And then list the reasons, because when it comes to changing your behaviors to work towards that goal, having those many whys and having them salient in your mind is going to be crucial. Because if you don't have those whys, then whenever you come across some sort of challenge,
Yeah.
you're more likely to fold and say, oh, I won't do the behavior anymore, and therefore you won't get the goal.
So when you talk about behaviours, what exactly do you mean?
Okay, so when I define behaviors, and ultimately being that behavioral scientist, behavior is what we want to change here, oftentimes,
Yep.
and it's the observable actions. So an emotion isn't a behavior, an emotion's a feeling, right? It's something that's in your head. So yes, we may want to change emotions, but strictly speaking, let's talk about hard actions and behavior. So again, behavior is an observable action.
Yep.
Lifting this up, moving it over there, that's an action. Submitting a form is an action. Coming to the gym is an action. Me feeling committed to something is not an action. It may lead to action, to behaviors,
Yep.
to actions, but it's not strictly speaking an action. So when we create goals and then think about and list very specifically what the behaviors are that you want to achieve, that you need to achieve, and engage in to get those goals, you need to be really concrete with those behaviors and start to map out what you have to do to get those goals. So just to summarize, behavior, observable actions. Everything else can be related, like motivations and emotions. They're related to behaviors. They could drive behaviors, or they could be the result of behaviors. But ultimately, to get things done in this world, to achieve whatever, you need to engage in actual action, not just thinking about doing things.
Yeah, right. That's so like watching like a motivational thing and like, I'm gonna do this, and then the next day you don't do it.
Yeah, exactly. So in that particular instance, what is motivation? It comes and goes, and it's good when you have high motivation if it leads to an action.
Yeah.
And that's good. I'm motivated to go to the gym. Perfect. Use that to go to the gym for that day, but you shouldn't be relying upon that particular lever, I suppose, the motivational lever, to go engage in that behavior all the time, because at some point you won't be motivated. And the question is, are you going to engage in that behavior, yes or no? So ultimately you want to create systems so that you don't need motivation, you don't need all these other things, you just do the thing. And that's what people talk about, developing habits, rituals, whatever it may be, systems to make it really seamless and efficient so that you're doing the behaviors without having to inspire yourself, watch a motivational video.
Yeah, right. And so what would you call how would you develop that habit?
Which habit in particular? Yes, tell me more.
So for example, the habit of coming to the gym. What sort of things would you recommend?
Okay, so firstly, if we acknowledge what the purpose is of coming to the gym, and that you have certain goals, because again, coming to the gym is the behavior, very granular, very, very concrete, but as long as it's embedded within the higher order, I want to engage in a healthy lifestyle. I want to be healthy, and here's what being healthy looks like. Here's what it feels like. So let's say you have that in mind, and let's say you've identified that to achieve those goals, those higher order purposes, you need to work out and exercise. And then you reverse engineer that, and you realize that, hold on a second, to do that, am I going to go for a run? Am I going to do this, that, or the other? Or am I going to go to the gym and work out? So that's how we reverse engineer it, get really concrete, get really specific to say, okay, and get it as zoomed in as possible in terms of the actions that you need to take. It's not just, I need to get fit or be fit. You have to actually conceptualize and articulate what that actually means and looks like, importantly. So in terms of coming to the gym, that's the behavior. But we can get more specific than that.
Okay.
And in this case, we can create behavioral statements. So it's not just coming to the gym. You need the who, the what, the when, the where, the how. You need all those ones, and you can simply lay that out in a particular sentence. So I want to come to the gym on these particular days, at this time, in this way, in this fashion. I'm going to walk here at this time with a friend, whatever it may be. So let's say that's the concrete
So
behavior you want
almost
to achieve.
visualizing what you're going to do.
Yeah, well, write out the thing, what it is.
Yep.
Then of course you can visualize it, sure.
Yeah,
Sure, but
okay.
as long as you know what it is,
Yep.
and when you clearly articulate it like that, you know what failure and success looks like in terms of purely that behavior. So you can actually say that I did or didn't do that thing. Sometimes you don't know whether you succeeded because your goal or your behavior isn't well articulated. But when you articulate what it means for you to engage in a behavior, then you know, did I actually come to the gym in this way? Did I do it at this time, whatever it may be? And you can be as specific or as higher level and abstract as you like, depending on the particular behavior. But
Yep.
being more concrete is going to be ideal.
Yep.
So articulating how you're going to come here, in what form and what time, makes it really specific for you, and it's not so abstract. So I think that's really useful to think about in those terms, and
Yep.
to create that behavioral statement. But in terms of that, the question is, okay, so let's say that's the behavior.
Yep.
You have the whys. Let's say you have that. So you have
Have the why, who, location,
Yes.
who you're going to come with.
and the broader purpose of
Yep.
what goals you want to achieve and everything else, and you realize that this behavior is part of many behaviors that will help you achieve that goal or multiple goals, whatever it may be. So the question is, what are you doing now in terms of that behavior? And this is all about auditing and understanding your context and why you're engaging in that behavior at the frequency that you are. So maybe you're doing it 2 times a week as opposed to 5, or maybe you're not doing it at all. So you have to understand your current state,
Yep.
where you want to get to in terms of that particular behavior. So you articulate the behavior, and then you say, I want to do it at this certain frequency or in this way. So you have I won't even say goal because I'll conflate what an actual goal is. You have your key behavior that you want to achieve,
Yep.
that you've written out, and you have your current state. So currently I'm doing it in these ways or not doing it. And now you want to plan, right? And create a clear action plan that's as seamless as possible, making it as easy as possible for you so that you can get from where you are right now to achieving that sort of behavior in a certain way. So here you want to audit and diagnose why aren't you doing that thing right now. So depending on whether you've actually tried to do it or not, but
Yeah.
it's something called a post-mortem. It's really useful. So
Okay.
again, post-mortem, after something's happened, you can think about in the future, what could go wrong in terms of me not engaging in this behavior. So by doing that, that allows you to identify challenges and barriers and issues that you could encounter
Yeah.
that you can create a contingency plan around. Because that's going to be key, because oftentimes people say, I want to do this thing, right? Not clearly defined, and they don't actually think what could get in the way of that. And then when life happens and things get in the way, they lose track of that goal and they get distracted by this barrier or challenge or whatever it may be. And then they end up not doing the behavior, not engaging in, of course, the actions, therefore they're not achieving their goals. So at the very first instance, you're thinking about the why, you have the motivation, all that good stuff, clearly defined.
You're feeling good. You're
You
going
know,
to go.
yeah, and you know where you want to get to.
Yeah.
You know where you are now, and then you start to project into the future. What could get in the way? Oh, maybe my kids will have this sort of practice. Okay, when you identify that particular barrier, then you can create contingency plans. So if this happens, then I'm going to do these things. So a related concept is if-then planning or contingency planning. If this happens, then I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do that. If this happens, I'll do this. So in a typical day, you come across some sort of challenge, there's traffic, this, that, or the other, you know what to do. And you don't have to overthink it and think about it in the moment and give yourself more cognitive load.
Yep.
So you have plans in place to say, okay, I know that I forgot this, therefore I'm going to be able to counteract that so that I can engage in the behavior that I need to engage in.
Yeah.
So contingency planning is going to be really key. And of course, there'll be things that you haven't thought about that could occur.
Yeah.
That's fine. You learn from that experience and then add that to your little list of if-thens.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so that's an important point, thinking about the future, how you want to get there.
Yeah, it spoke about that in the book as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like really thinking about what you've done in the past and then thinking about how you can be reactive to it and then really giving that a go in the future when that actually happens again.
Sure.
Put it into practice what you've thought about and then doing it and seeing the behavior or how you feel about that situation.
That's right. So a lot of this is knowing yourself, reflecting on your past behaviors. So let's say if it's coming to the gym, in the past, what's gotten in my way? What's driven me to go to the behavior, to engage in this behavior? What's allowed me to keep doing the behavior? Because everyone's going to have different levers to pull in terms of motivation or capabilities, whatever it may be. So everyone's going to be different to varying degrees, but there are also commonalities across people where certain drivers might be prevalent for, let's say, certain behaviors. So when you start to reflect upon yourself, what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, that can at least give you a good expectation for how to plan for that future and how to contingency plan, and then create the steps that you need to take to overcome the barriers that may come your way. Okay, so let's say you take all that into account. So now you know your weaknesses. Maybe you get distracted by social media or whatever it may be. Then you can start to plan to counteract those weaknesses. Let's say you remove the distraction so that you can engage in that behavior. You can actually go to the gym. So maybe if you're distracted on YouTube, whatever it may be, and that eats up some of your time, and you found in the past that it's led to you losing motivation or just forgetting about time and then not going to the gym. Okay, so if in those circumstances you plan on going to the gym at a certain time in a certain way, before that time, let's say pretty close to that time, remove the potential for that distraction to even occur.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. Removing things, like removing certain negative behaviors or unconstructive behaviors is going to be really important. And in terms of self-control, removing distractions and things that could tempt you. So if you're talking about healthy eating, you go to the shop. Let's say most of us go to the shops. Where do you want to walk through in terms of the aisles?
Straight to the chocolate aisle.
Legitimately. So the question is, do you want to set yourself up for failure by walking through the chocolate aisle and having to resist and like, fight yourself? And is that what you want to do? And let's say 8 times out of 10, you may win that battle. So you don't eat it, but maybe 2 times out of 10, and then when you do eat it 2 times out of 10, you buy a whole lot and gorge, and it leads to downstream consequences, right? So these things have ripple effects. So being able to have a strategy about avoiding temptation is really useful. Okay, so you plan out opportunities for you to not be tempted at all, not getting circumstance to be tempted. That's key, because you don't want to. I don't want to use the metaphor of deplete your resources in terms of mental effort, so I won't use it. I won't use it, even though I said it. You don't want to basically have to exercise that and put more cognitive load and strain to say, I just had to push against
So apart from
my urges to eat this chocolate. So just avoid it in the first place. Creates those behaviors and strategies to avoid it. So let's say if you don't buy food and put it in the fridge or put it in your pantry, as unhealthy foods that you class as unhealthy, that's good, because that means you avoid the whole temptation of opening the pantry and seeing treats. So
you always go for the chocolate.
a useful strategy to, I guess, remove those distractions and triggers that may lead to you avoiding the gym or not going to the gym.
Yeah, right. So just to throw another example in there of the shopping scenario, apart from avoiding that aisle, what's something else that they could use?
Yeah. Okay, so let's say being in that environment in the first place may be problematic for you, because for whatever reason,
straight away.
Yeah, let's say, okay,
it can be stressful.
Yeah, what can you do? Maybe you can order online.
Okay.
That avoids the whole potential for that to occur. Of course, that means you're still at home, you're still picking, so you may need to have countermeasures for all these contingencies that you create, right? And all plans. But at least that would remove the likelihood of you being in the environment, at least, and having maybe someone else do it who's not tempted by those sweets, or having them check. They can either do the behavior of ordering the things, or they can double check it for you. You create your order and then maybe they double check it. But it's all about what's most feasible and viable, though. So
yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, right. I like that. And let's go into that other habit of communication between communicating what you want to get out of something and getting the communication right in order for family life to be happy, for you to focus on your goals that may not align 100% with your partner or something like that.
Yeah, and it's tricky, of course, but ultimately, life and relationships and whatever it may be, compromise has to be involved. But oftentimes, if the goal is meaningful for you, then often it should be meaningful for your partner, and having shared goals and shared purpose is really important. And that's where, if you're just talking about relationships generally speaking, having certain fundamental things in common would ensure that you avoid having any disagreements and arguments and having that misalignment in the very first place.
Yeah.
Right? So,
Yeah.
selecting mates and partners that align in terms of key values of what's important. Relationships, like the relationship is important, the family time is important. If you're religious or spiritual, whatever it may be, or health and fitness, are we all on the same page in terms of, this is what we all value? Okay, so that firstly, that can mitigate all those downstream consequences.
Yeah.
But let's say you're there, you have certain goals, they have certain goals that may be in conflict, which is fair. And when I say conflict, I mean it may be conflict in terms of time. So you want to do certain things during a certain block of time, they want to do other things.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you don't want to, there's no winners and losers, that's not the best way to frame it, but ultimately it's about communicating like, the whys, the purpose, the goals that you have, and them being able to communicate the whys, the purpose, and the goals that they have.
Yeah.
Because you're not the only one with the goals, they have goals as well, and ultimately it's about compromising and finding the best way to satisfy those important goals and them satisfying their own goals as well. And of course, if the goals are in alignment or the same sort of goals, that's perfect. It just streamlines the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely.
There's sort of conversation where you just have to be transparent and clear about what you want and why you want it. And then importantly, invite them to present their goals or their purpose, their vision, and the why behind it as well.
Yeah.
And this gets to, I guess, I'm not a clinical psychologist or relationship psychologist or counselor or anything, but it gets down to those fundamental skills of being able to connect with your partner and to be able to share these sort of things. But ultimately, when you've engaged in the type of steps that I mentioned before, about developing your own purpose in terms of different domains of life and the goals, help your partner or whoever do that sort of thing as well. And given that you may share a life together and you have to navigate time and what you're doing at what point in time, having them do it as well is really useful because then you can start to structure your day, those 24 hours that you have in a day and however many hours in a week to ensure that you're both moving in that sort of direction, in the same direction, but towards your own individual goals as well as shared goals.
Yeah, okay, cool. And just want to touch on time management.
Mm-hmm.
What is your opinion between being fully scheduled, like every minute of every hour, your calendar's chockers with every little bits and piece, opposed to not being scheduled, but what was the term that was used? It was in relation to like being a top performer throughout the day instead of being so scheduled and full of strategy.
Yeah.
What lights your fire, sort of, that's the wrong word.
But in any case, firstly, I will speak in generalities because it depends on the individual circumstances, right?
Yeah.
What people are trying to achieve, what their own temperament is like, what stage in life they're in, their own life experiences, what their own preferences are, right? Because there's always trade-offs with anything.
Yeah.
So there's no real optimal solution unless you narrowly define what the parameters are for that goal and that solution. Otherwise, there's always trade-offs. So you do this in a certain way, then it may be beneficial in terms of one particular goal, but let's say other aspects of your personhood are affected. Let's say you don't get to meet with friends anymore. So you're so heavily structured that you don't have that time with the social aspect. And in terms of domains of life, that's a pretty important pillar.
Yeah.
Are you willing to sacrifice that? Yes or no? You have to weigh that up. But in terms of going one way or the other, there's definitely a spectrum, of course, and different periods of life may call for going down one particular path of being more heavily structured versus not. But ultimately, it depends on your own circumstances and what you want to try to achieve and how you actually want to live in terms of your day-to-day. So with those caveats aside, if you want to engage in creative work, then you don't want to be too heavily structured where you want to have time to think and you want to have time for your subconscious, I'm going to put in quotation marks, subconscious mind to process information and make the connections, because your conscious self that you're thinking about, maybe the voice that you have in your head, it's not the only thing or entity in your brain that's making decisions, that's solving problems. The subconscious, or however you want to define that, can work on problems and make connections, and that's where oftentimes it leads to those aha moments, the insight.
Yeah.
And it doesn't come from you thinking it through really hard. It comes from you taking in the information, having a little think, and then doing other things and giving yourself time. That's why I'll take one particular case. We're not all Einstein, but let's use this as an example. You think about particular problems, and this is again really intellectual and creative. Here's what he engaged in. But you think about a particular problem and then give it time to rest, and then for the connections to be made, and eventually the insight will occur. And that's one particular use case. And again, depending on our own work, what we want to achieve, and the constraints that we have, we're going to have more or less time to be able to do those type of things. But going for walks are a nice one to allow you to be creative and to generate output and deliver something in terms of performance that you can be proud of. And those bursts of inspiration or really creative thinking or problem solving are maybe more beneficial, and that may come from having less time and really strict timetables, but less time of just doing all these little tasks, meaningless tasks basically.
Yeah.
But ultimately being more freed up and looser in terms of that, so that you can have your mind to actually have some space to think. That will have potentially disproportionate impact on whatever you want to achieve, as opposed to if you went the other route of trying to muscle it and try to schedule every little thing. You don't give yourself time to create the innovative solutions or to actually solve your problem.
Yeah.
So in that particular case, even though you may be looking at the number of hours or minutes on a particular problem and say, oh, that's not as much as if I had scheduled 3-hour whole blocks or whatever it may be, the output itself may be disproportionately much larger than the output of that original situation where you put more input. So in that case, think about the input, the quality of the input, and then the output that you're getting. Where's the best value, best bang for buck? And oftentimes it comes from, of course, having scheduled time slots to do certain tasks, of course, but then thinking about our own psychology throughout the day. How can you leave some more time, optimal time, in terms of your mood, your energy levels, to actually think through important problems, and then have that time to maybe do other things while your subconscious deals with making the connections, and eventually, depending on the problems that you're trying to solve, having that insight.
Okay.
Mix it up, don't go too heavy on it, don't have no structure at all, somewhere in the middle. Most of the time somewhere in the middle. Some sort of structure, but then you have to think about your own body, your own motivations and everything else. When during the day are you best to do certain types of work, certain types of exercise or thinking or whatever it may be. So it's just an ongoing process for each person to come to learn more about themselves, and to experiment and to tinker and to find by trial and experience, by trial and error, that certain approaches work in terms of configuring their day to achieve certain outcomes.
Yeah, right. So from how you're speaking, I'm going to guess that you go loosely, but structured at the same time.
Yeah, so it depends on the goal that I want to achieve. But if you're talking about mental work, and a lot of I'm not how do I describe what I do? It's not physical, let's just say that. So it's definitely mental work. So it's all about the quality of input that I put in to hopefully produce that disproportionate output. So in that case, I have to optimize for having time to think and to be creative. And in a particular day, you can only have so much high quality input in terms of thinking. So it's not like you can have 6 hours of study per day. No, it's not like you have 6 hours of productive creative work. Yeah, exactly. We have maybe a few hours at best, perhaps, per day.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it's all in one block. It could just be at certain sections of the day you have focused time and do that deep work. If you've never heard of that concept, deep work is awesome.
Yeah, I've also seen like the phone app that's got like the focus for 25, break for 10.
Yep.
Do you think that works?
Yeah, sure. I suspect so. The Pomodoro type of method, and thinking about attention and how it works. I'm saying things that I wasn't going to say, but attention is not really like a muscle. So, what's attention more like? I'm not a neuroscientist or cognitive scientist, but ultimately, in terms of attention, it's not unlimited. We know that. So, how do you want to make the most of the attention when you do have your full faculties about you, right? And that sort of approach would be ideal, like having short bursts of just intense work, as intense as you can have, and as long as you can maintain that intensity and quality. Because you're not going to be able to start with if you're talking about deep work, deep work is dedicated time that you focus on one particular problem or challenge without having to switch to other tasks or be distracted by other things. So you're in a room by yourself and you're just thinking or doing something, you're in the zone. That'll facilitate that flow, getting in the zone. When you're creating those deep work time periods, you're not going to start with 2 hours, a 2 hour block. You'll start with as little as you can do good quality work. And then bit by bit, extend upon that little by little until you develop the skill, the patience, the capacity to go a little bit longer. And then, of course, importantly, reflect upon the output that you're getting for your input to make sure that, basically track what that distribution looks like in terms of the inputs versus outputs. What's that ratio? And so that you can optimize in balancing the inputs and those outputs.
Yeah, right.
Hopefully it's not too abstract at least, but
no, that was good. And to finish off, before we started this, you mentioned that you're creating an ebook. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Plugs. Okay. So given that my PhD and a lot of my work is and has been on influence and persuasion and behavior change, excuse me, this ebook here is targeted specifically at salespeople, but I think that the principles are quite broadly applicable because there's a whole science behind influence and persuasion, of course, and in particular for influence and influence tactics, there are certain techniques or tactics that you can apply to influence other people. That is, influence their behavior. Oftentimes you target behaviors, right? So how can I get you to do this or that or something else? And for this particular ebook, at least, we're looking at salespeople, so influence tactics that are specific to the context of having a buyer and a seller. So I'm a salesperson, I'm a seller, you're a buyer. What sort of tactics, techniques, and approaches, as well as associated scripts and strategies, can I apply to help me close better, sell, be a better salesperson in terms of whatever metrics that you're looking at. But here, the metric is behavior change or like buying, perhaps. So yeah, this ebook here is going to be, I don't even know whether I'll call it ebook. Maybe it'll be a combo ebook and actual hardcover ebook. But in any case, it's going to be, it's going to be looking at 7 key influence tactics that are science-based, that are found to be really effective at increasing sales effectiveness.
Yeah, right.
So being able to sell more effectively, get the sale, closing the deals, whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely.
And with those 7 tactics, just like with anything that we mentioned, there are the general principles, of course, the 7 tactics. It's all about how you apply it that makes the magic, and developing the skills and the habits, again, to understand when to apply certain tactics, pull certain levers to drive that influence, the more effective influence and behavior change. So it's going to be a really practical guide, not much theory at all, besides saying, here are the 7 tactics, here's a little bit about where it came from, what it is, but importantly, getting to, here's how to apply it straight away in terms of a generic approach, and then providing really concrete examples of, and tips as well to applying and tweaking it to your context, because social interactions are really dynamic, really complex. Not all interactions are the same. Even though you may be doing the same action of selling something, a product or a service, how can you apply it to each context? So
each different
now
market,
I'm talking to Brett.
demographic.
You'll have your own motivations and drivers that I'll have to cater to. So with my specific knowledge and of say the product or service, and of you and of your needs and of these tactics, how can I amend these tactics and so that they're delivered in an appropriate way to increase the likelihood that I convince you of something. In this case here, to buy, let's say, a product or a service.
Yeah, cool.
So
Sounds
it's
really
going to have a whole lot of really funky scripts about, well, I won't reveal too much here, but it'll have a whole lot of really useful. Exactly. I'll give you a copy for sure. So different things you can say and how to approach the conversation, so you can build better rapport and connect and understand their perspective, as opposed to saying, I'm giving you the solution without even knowing that the solution doesn't match the particular problem that they're having. So all these little things that you can tinker with and little levers that you can pull in terms of the cognitive social psychology, so that you can achieve those goals that you want to achieve. So again, that context is more sales specific for this particular book, but broadly speaking, the influence tactics are quite useful outside of that domain.
Of everything.
With humans, if you want to change behaviors, and it's ultimately going to be the implementation or the actual things that you say and do. It may vary across contexts or across different use cases, I suppose.
Yeah, right. Exciting stuff. Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time again.
Of course.
I will leave Dr. Isaac's links down below as well, and we look forward to seeing that book.
Lovely.
Thank you very
mate.
much.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.